I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Hu and Vitalii Dodonov, who are the co-founders of Stan. For those unaware, Stan is a creator platform. It is the simplest way to start an online business, and I can testify for that because I've been using it for the past 4 or 5 months. Now, the thing here is that they have 60,000 plus creator entrepreneurs using Stan. So here's what we're going to talk about: the exact steps you can take to become a full-time creator, what to write or create content around, and what to sell, the most important thing about growing authentically on social media, even if you have multiple interests. And then we transition beyond the one-person business and talk about how John and Vitalii plan to become a $1 billion company with only 10 engineers and their motivation for doing so, the most important levers for going from 0 to 30 million ARR in 3 years profitably, how to find A players and 10x engineers that want to work with you even when you're new, and much more in between. I hope you enjoy this conversation with the Stan co-founders from their office in Los Angeles. I want to start with the big picture. So for those that don't know, we went over in the intro what Stan is, who it helps. So for those that want to become a creator, if you can just think extremely big picture, super high level, what are the steps people need to take in order to go from, okay, I have this skill set or interest, to I have this many followers and I'm making this much money?
So it's actually never been easier. I'll go first, I guess, and you fill in. I immediately think it's literally never been easier. And it's almost just a mindset shift that's required. As in, what we've learned, we have 60,000 customers now. We're about to cross $250 million made for our customers. And they're all people similar to our stories, like came from nothing. Like I was immigrant single mom, didn't have connections, all that kind of stuff. Like it's permissionless now. We all have some sort of value to give. And so I guess I'll give the example of me, and hopefully it's helpful for people. When I first started creating content a couple of years ago, I was just like doom scrolling TikTok during COVID and asking myself, like, what value do I have to give? And we all have some version of that. And so for me, I cold called my way to a job on Wall Street back in the day. It was something I was really passionate about. I was like, how do you help any other underrepresented kid get their first dream job? And so I was just like, I'll just make content about something I'm passionate about, which is like helping financially empower other people with what I'm really good at, which is like, how do you write a great resume, or how do you get a cold email to actually convert into an informational interview? Like I would just make content about that. So just writing, basically I was thinking about what kind of content I could write for the younger version of me. And I think that's just step one. And where I think a lot of people get caught up is like, oh my God, I got to build a business and how do I monetize and all this kind of stuff. What I've learned, at least through the entrepreneur journey, is the steps actually one has to take are really easy. We actually are the ones who make it harder on ourselves because of the emotion, the insecurity, what have you. And so the written formula, this is like literally all someone needs to do. This is it. Like this is the success pipeline that we see for all of our successful customers. It's every day show up and iterate. So in this context, step number one is like figure out what kind of content you should make. And that's the intersection between what you're really passionate about and what you're really good at. So AKA, what is something you would talk about for free and not get paid for? And then every single day, all you need to do is just show up and push yourself to post and use that as a learning. Don't take it personally, use it as a learning, however it performs. And I always guarantee people, if you sit there and you post for an entire year every single day, like I guarantee you will be successful because you will start to see the patterns and like, okay, I posted 30 times, 27 of them flopped and got crickets, and I'm so embarrassed, but there are like 1 or 2 that did well, and you just double down on whatever that is. And so the next step of that of how do you build a business is like, if you just show up every day for a year, you will build an audience. Like you're such a testament to that. I'm a testament to that. You're now a testament to that in terms of the audience you're building. Like everyone that we see is a testament to that. If you just show up every single day, and then once you have that, you have a good sense of like, your audience is your customer base. And all you have to do is figure out your first digital product or your first course or your community, whatever you want to host. It's just giving them more value. So like you'll have a customer base and literally they will tell you what they want to buy because they would be commenting on your stuff and DMing you with specific questions. And all you have to do is just figure out how do I productize or monetize that specific question. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the first example I gave was like, I put up a viral video unintentionally. I just green screened my old resume from my junior internship. I had to like recover my Dropbox password to like find that resume. I was like, these are literally the bullets I did. And then the very first version of Stan I built for my own account, all I did was I just uploaded that same file. I didn't change anything of it. It's still like a 2016.docx or whatever it is. And I just sold that for $10. And that's how I made my first $10,000 of passive income. Because it was authentic to what my audience wanted, which was help on their resumes, and they wanted a template. So that's my answer, at least.
Okay, I have a slightly different story, and my way into content was like a much more long-term, and it's like tiptoeing into this. And it comes from me just having a very conventional mindset around. It's like you go to work and we're building this company. It's like, I just don't have time. And I think that's the challenge that most people are struggling with. And then a couple of years ago, I was curious about storytelling. And one idea that's really resonated is in order to be a great storyteller, and to tell interesting stories, you need to live an interesting life. And I was like, I don't know, my life is kind of boring. It's like I'm heads down, doing the same things for 16 hours per day. But then what I realized over time is that my life is actually not boring at all, and it's very interesting if you learn to notice the interesting things, and then you learn to just organically talk about them. And I think one of the most important skills and mindset shifts that all of us will come to realize over time is just living your life the way you want to, and then sharing its story, and then just finding what is it people look up to you for and productizing it over time. It is the path that I think is resonating, because as you start telling your stories, then people start knowing you for something, and they start being curious about you, on the topics that you touch on. And then the product ideas would come, the platforms would come. But you discovering yourself and what is it you're actually good at, authentically passionate about, and it's like what just you think about in your free time. This is the most organic kind of transition into content that I think a lot of people can learn to take without making pivotal changes to their life all at the same time.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. In my audience, there's quite a few people that resonate with the topics and interests around philosophy, things that are kind of abstract and high level, and they get interested in business. And when they go to start posting content, it is usually when you read the posts, it sounds like a philosopher speaking. It sounds like a philosophical quote. And while I don't think those things are bad, I also don't think they lead to sales or something that will allow you to sustain that thing. So when you're starting on a specific platform, what are you looking for when you're writing a piece of content to kind of give yourself a mental checklist to know that will perform well? Because people don't know what well is when they're starting.
Oh, what an interesting question about creating content. Also, what a privilege to study and think about the science of content in that way. I think how I would describe it is it comes down to how much your content can make someone feel something, right? I think I can speak towards even my own journey. I think I've always approached content historically from a very cerebral lens. I pride myself on trying to be as thoughtful as possible and trying to be as intellectual as possible. And I think in some cases that works really, really well. But if you think about us as a base case as human beings scrolling a feed, and you think about what is the lowest common denominator of all of us, it's us. We're literally animals. We're like meat boxes, and we feel emotions. And so if you think about the work required to care about your content, so if you think about not yourself, but always put yourself in the customer's shoes, the audience's shoes, what it is are they more likely after a long day of work, and think about what you're competing with in an algorithm. You're competing with naked hot people and funny dumb memes. And so if you do want to approach things, you should never be inauthentic to your style and what you want to do. But it's up to the artist and the entrepreneur to decide how much they want to play the market game. And so you have to figure out how within that world of the algorithm and all those other things that we could be, I could stare at some awesome food or stare at a really good looking person. What are you going to do to emotionally or personally hook me in to actually have me give you my attention? And so the work required in purely being philosophical, you have to really think through how you're going to hook people in, because it takes more work. And so my recommendation for people starting out is to try to be as tangible and concrete as possible. I hate giving blanket advice, but I would just push you to be how can I make this as relatable as possible is maybe the better framing. And so for me, or actually I'll give Stan as an example. When we market Stan, what we're learning, and I learned this from the Red Bull team. I've been obsessively studying Red Bull and talking to the brand team. They're the best in the business at making content. And one of the guys at Red Bull was like, John, you know what your problem is? You don't have a physical product. I can just put this Red Bull can, you guys can like imagine this Red Bull can here, versus I'm going to sit here and tell you like Stan like literally is the best value product in the market. It's literally the simplest and easiest way to start an online business. But like, what does that mean to people? And so you have to break it down and like, well, it's because you can host literally a course, a community, a digital product, a calendar booking, literally everything, which would cost hundreds of dollars a month. And then instead, Stan is like $29 a month. But like, think about how much time that took and how much attention you'd have to give me on content versus like Red Bull. This is a can, it gives you wings. And so maybe that's a great example of the philosophical to the tangible divide, and trying to find your balance and style to that is maybe my advice.
One thing I'll add there in term to make being tangible more tangible. One thing that I always found helped me is like, okay, what can I do? Is there, it doesn't have to be a specific set of steps, but is there a different way I can think about something, a different way I can go about my life? And if you can tie what it is that you're talking about to just simple behavior changes that people can experiment with, if those experimentations get results, then they're going to remember you for that. Just think James Clear, Atomic Habits. You start implementing those. Anytime you hear the word habits, you think James Clear, and it's just like that. Did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of just how to make the content less quote-like to build that connection with the audience?
What I've learned in my content, it actually to a great degree comes to the storytelling, because when we read content and the content that we remember, you can position it like you would start with the hook and then you would try to explain something first principles and then you would make a case. So this is kind of philosophy-esque. But then an alternative way to do this is like you still need to start with the hook and with something memorable that is like a quotable piece of it. But then what I'm noticing is that if you follow up with a story that is very personal, like it's those stories that I think make people feel in a very particular way, that stand out, that do remarkably well, and that are actually organic and unique. I think that's actually probably the biggest differentiator.
Yeah. How do you think about writing a story for something that can be so short, like a LinkedIn post, a TikTok, whatever it may be? Because when people, at least for me, when I didn't know what storytelling was, like to a deep extent, I always think, oh, I have to write a book. It's like, tell a story, okay, write a book. That's where my mind went. So how do you think about that? Is there a specific framework or?
Not necessarily framework, but it starts with intention. One of the things I think is true is you can write a story of any length in like any format. Like you can reduce a book to one pager, you can reduce one pager to like a LinkedIn post with 5 lines. Your particular like original style is, one sentence, one liner, that is very distinct in its own way, because like even folks who kind of do this, they still stick with like maybe couple line paragraphs. Like you're very intentional about this. And it kind of starts with making a choice to do this and then finding your way to express it, because quotable phrases. If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. And I think the great concise like content can be 5 lines long, but you need to really spend time figuring out how to say and what to say to actually communicate that. So to make it tangible, like it starts with intention, and then it goes with consistent practice, and then you'll find a way eventually.
It's so interesting how we have different frameworks and approaches to life. And maybe it speaks towards why we work so well as partners, because the way I was immediately approaching it was around I was like, what is the formula I can distill down for everyone? And I think the shortest possible story, the framework is just look at every successful story that's propagated through the ages. All you need is tension and conflict, and ideally some sort of resolution. But if you think about like what is the hook, it's just tension in some sort of way, right? And so if you can just tell that story, just story arc, which can be a sentence, like 3 sentences, like that's all you need. And that to me is a story.
Yeah, I agree. I always personally, whenever I fall off track with writing, it's always, okay, just train my mind to think in terms of pain points, where it's like, I have an idea. Okay, what's the pain point? That kind of, it makes it a lot more possible to make tangible after that, at least for me. So that's something to try. Just think of a pain point, especially if it's in like a pain point that's happened to you in the past, so you can write to that person more effectively.
The piece that I wanted to share here that actually made a big difference in me as someone who is like reasonably early stage in the creator journey is, it sounds so simple, but it makes such a big difference who the focus of your content is, like whether it's you or whether it's your audience. Because to John's earlier point is like you're trying to kind of talk to yourself, like to your younger self, and teach them, but you still have to do that in a way where the other person sees themselves like in the younger you, because it's like the pieces of content that I've created that didn't do well at all, and when I'm looking at folks who are just starting out and also not resonating yet, it all comes down to like, let me try to find that authentic self. Let me talk about myself, like me. This is how I think. This is like how I express. And the world is just, I don't care. Why would they? They care about themselves, and learning how to write in a way where it's like you're writing about yourself, like to your younger self, but in a way that others see themselves in it. Like just this simple change of focus and learning to do that consistently with intention makes a world of difference.
I think the mantra we've built Stan off of, and I think our approach to content as well, and my personal philosophy on it is just give. Like when you say pain point, I think of it the same way as like, how can I give as much value as possible? And one of the ways for sure every single person who wants to make content can think about that lens is always like, what is the problem someone has? How can I offer to solve that? And that to me is like, if you give, like you will receive back in some sort of way.
Yeah. Just problem solving in general is such a good mindset to have, like in any stage of business, especially at the beginning. That's kind of just what you have to train yourself into. To transition a tiny bit, or even go backwards a bit, in terms of the opportunity you see to start as a creator right now, I feel like you guys have front row seats to what's going on and how that happens. So a few things, like it's just very noisy right now in the creator space, AI space, every space. And what are your general thoughts on it? I'll potentially give you a little hook to grab onto in terms of the For You pages and interest graphs, and us moving towards that and away from like follower count, more very personal brands.
Sure. There's never been a better time to start. Like, and the reason why is because people are all realizing that social media content is no longer social media. It's just the new marketing channel. We're not paying attention to newspapers and legacy TV, and there will eventually be alpha in those channels at some point, but the way that all of our attention is consuming, we're all now just consuming through YouTube or through TikTok. Like I barely even watch my Netflix anymore because I'm watching a Dan Co video instead, right? Your thumbnail title is just way better than whatever I'm watching on Netflix. And so in that context, you have to think about, okay, every single small business owner who wants to actually like break out from the competition needs to be where the user attention is. And there's never been a better time to just start talking about things, especially with what you're applying on the interest graph. Like some of our most successful creators who make the most income have like 5,000 followers. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're being connected with their core niche, and you don't even need a large follower count now to be seen as credible. You just need to be in front of the right audience. And so I'd actually personally say from the data, especially that we see, like there's never been a better time. Our success rates are going up. Like more and more people are succeeding because also the audiences are more maturing and understanding, like there's more of a social acceptance around buying things online from Instagram or from YouTube. Like that's, our consumer behaviors are changing. And so with that macro trend, ideally you would also position yourself to be like in favor of that tailwind, which is like, trust me, just start posting in whatever way is authentic to you, keep iterating, and I promise you will succeed. So
one thing I would add to that, and I don't know to what degree it applies to other social media platforms. Instagram, I think, operates a little bit differently, but for LinkedIn, for example, Twitter, I think would X now, would have a similar dynamic. It's not just about the content and For You page, but also who you associate with. Because if you think about how the content gets surfaced and presented to others, and it's like if someone gives you their vote of approval, which is like a comment, a like, any form of engagement, then you're effectively getting exposed to their audience. And if your content is authentically good, and it's like what you get there is an opportunity for more people to look at you, and then they will make a decision. It's like, do they want to hang around by following, or do they want to move on to something else? So another dimension that I think is important to recognize when we are considering embarking on this creator journey is, like, content is bread and butter. Like to be a creator, you need to create, but there's also all the other work that you need to do. Like you need to figure out who are the people that you associate with. You need to learn to engage and kind of be present around their content, whether it's like commenting as soon as they post something, and just kind of find your group and grow with it.
Yeah, that's one thing I had to do at the beginning a lot. And I'll follow up with this question and kind of answer it myself in the meantime. In terms of building a tribe, and that being the one thing that a lot of creators miss out on, and what keeps a lot of them from seeing that initial success, because they think, okay, content creator, write content. That's all I do. And then they only write the content. They may see like a few fluctuations in likes and views and et cetera, but they're missing the tribe. They're missing, okay, who knows who is a part of my greater circle, and am I known to these people? Are they going to share me? Are they going to support me, et cetera, et cetera? So when I was first on Twitter, I wasn't replying to people just to reply to people. I was replying to them to form this tight-knit tribe of people that could support me. We could share strategies, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of the thing that you see that prevents creators from seeing that success, can you pinpoint what that is?
I think it's just a mindset and awareness gap, which I think you just help solve for people. Like, I think it's just the journey of a human being where we start first in our silos. We're like, me. Because like, I need to like find success for myself. I literally need to put food on the table. And so it's like climbing up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you start to think about, oh wait, I have the success and people are commenting on this stuff. And I think my journey personally was like, oh, there's like these really nice people like leaving super nice comments, and then, you know, a couple of you being like super mean for no reason. But specifically those people, I like felt so grateful. I was like, thank you so much for the kind words, what have you. And it was just my own human nature. I was just like, I want those people also to feel seen. Like I almost feel bad that you're commenting on my stuff. Like, please don't take the time to do that. And I think that's just like relationship building in general. You start to learn like, oh wait, there are other humans out there who also want to connect and also care about the same thing, and you start to feel some like giddy, almost like childhood like joy and passion to that. And I think the next step of that awareness is like, oh wait, and you can make it really utilitarian too. It's like you can build a more effective business is one where more people are more bought into what you're doing. And so then you're starting to like, you're waking up to the majority of like, oh, this whole Instagram app is actually an ecosystem, right? Like in the ecosystem of Dan, there's, you know, all these other creators who are also really successful, and we can actually work together towards a mission, or we can, you know, I have 100,000 people that are in my tribe, but like how close do they feel to me in that? Like every follower isn't worth the same. It's like some creators who have lots of followers who have people would like die for. Like there's so many people out there, including myself, like I would die for Emma Chamberlain. Like that girl is awesome. Right. But I'm also a subscriber to like 17 other people that I can't even name off the top of my head because they're not as like personally relevant to me. And that's because I think she's built such a great community and she built such a great brand. And so it's just like, for me, I think it's just the mindset and the awareness of like, you're not just sending your content into the void. There are real human beings on the other end. And the more you can make them feel seen and heard and like, hey, they're part of something greater, the more effective I think you like just purely rationally will be. So.
Yeah.
One more thing to add to that, I'm just now realizing how much of this kind of tribe and community like actually matters and it works. I think one of the early signs that I've noticed that actually helped me believe in this direction is like continue and persevere is when I just started posting, couple months just raw ideas, probably not any good. And then I go to a community event, an entrepreneurial thing in Toronto, and 3 people that I had distant connection with just approached me and it's like, Vitalii, this thing that you shared, it's like it resonated with me. I was like, you've seen this? Like you remembered it to bring this up, and then I've learned that creating content is one of the things that it enables you to do. It allows you to stay in touch with people like who you personally know or somewhat connected. And it's just you just organically sharing with the world, like, what are you up to? Like, what are you thinking about? What's on your mind? And it allows them, you may not be as connected with them because you don't know as much about them, but they know a lot about you, and it creates more opportunity for just you to have a conversation. Like when someone leaves a comment, like, do you reply to a comment or do you not reply to a comment? And if you do reply to a comment, this is like, they connect with you, you connect with them, you create that relationship that they continue to support you, like with, like on your journey going forward, and all of this compounds. I don't know if you see a lot of kind of virality and overnight success. I don't believe that's the main thing. like in content. It's just consistent actions performed over and over again, and it's like building and compounding. And then it might happen overnight, but there's like years building up to it.
Yeah. To touch on that, even if you were to get 1 million views on one YouTube video, if you're starting from 0 subscribers, I think you'd be kind of disappointed with how many subscribers that led to, or how many retained viewers, or even just fans that leads to. To me, it's less about funnels. Like, funnels matter. We'll briefly touch on that. But it's more about like building a world. Like, you're putting out all of this content, not because it's just one piece of content that you're sending out. The more content people are exposed to from you, the more they can read your content from a better context. So the more they see, the more they're like, oh, Dan is saying this. And your content, you can be a lot more flexible at that point, because you can say, James Clear can say habits and 100 million people will like it, when someone else could say it and it's going to get 0 views, right? So things like that. Before we go into more about like Stan, startups, etc., I have 2 other things I want to talk about niche. I want to talk about first product, or the first products that you see that do really well. So let's start with niche. The most confusing, you search niche on YouTube, you get 1 billion different videos. How do you think about finding, creating, developing a niche as a beginner?
This is a really polarizing topic for some reason. So I will just share my take, which you should take with a grain of salt and then interpret it for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think the overarching theme is you are the niche. People are like, oh my God, there's so many fitness creators out there. There are already so many philosophy writers or whatever it is. And I'm like, sure, that's fine. That's true, but there's none of you. And so the Naval quote I will always hold in my head is escape competition through authenticity. Mm-hmm. Like, you might be a fitness trainer, which there are already hundreds of thousands who aren't even on social. So like the market's already mature and complex and competitive there, but they're specifically definitely not, someone who's had your story specifically with maybe the set of physical ailments you've been given, and then with 2 kids, and you've specifically learned how to lose weight in this specific way, like while picking up your kids, while also staying sane and running a 9 to 5, like whatever your story is, at that level of authenticity and specificity, no one else will beat you at that. So that is the learned and earned insight that you particularly have. That is like your niche. But I'd caution people to be hyper intentional about not being as broad as possible when they first start. And this is where it can get polarizing. My take is specifically, when you're first starting out, like you just mentioned, when you have 0 subscribers, the best way to think about it is like, think about all the memes you've sent to your friends like in your DMs or random TikToks you've sent to people. Do you remember any of those people's faces, or probably even the meme itself? Of the hundreds, you might remember like 1 or 2 with like a subconscious recall. So you don't remember the faces. And so you need to consistently show up for people, because they don't know who you are, and they won't remember, and they don't care who you are until you consistently show up in a really consistent way. And the more specific initially early on that you are in that, like you're known as the beekeeping guy, or like the crochet person, like whatever that, these are all little examples on Stan that make like tens of thousands of dollars. But like, if you're known for that particular thing, or like I am specifically a personal trainer for moms over 40 who want more time back, like after their 9 to 5, like that specificity, if you show up 3 times, you'll be remembered. And so that's my caution around the niche piece, is like, my personal opinion is that you should find an inch of your wedge and differentiate maniacally at that specificity, and then expand over time and allow yourself to like be more of a full person over time. So that's my take.
Yeah. At the risk of potentially discouraging action for people, what I find beautiful about the polarizing topics is that 2 successful people can do 2 different things and get very similar results, or get results nonetheless, right? Where I agree, you are the niche. I say that all the time. What I recommend, or like what I did, is I have one focus area, but I make a lot of noise on the side as well. It's like I'm showing up consistently, maybe every other day. On Twitter, you can post a lot. So I'd say like maybe once a week, I would show up in one specific way around web design. And then I would talk about self-improvement, mindset here and there, and I'd have wider data points where I can notice more anomalies between different topics and then start to like merge them. So either way, I think it really depends. But for the people, I would say for the people that know what it is they want to wedge themselves into, absolutely do that. I didn't really, because I was like, I'm in web design. That's what I help people with. That's what I charge for, but it's not what I want to do in the future. And I don't want to get too deep into that because it's not what I want to do. And so maybe for the like hyper polymaths that just don't know, just make a lot of noise, see what works, and then stick with one thing for a bit if it does work. Did you have any additions?
One thing that I would add, I fully agree with John on the authenticity and how you need to find it and create it. And I actually don't think that they'll, like, for example, if you approach niche selection, it's like, hey, here's a range of topics on which I can talk about. I just want to invest in for the next year to, create content about it and like create digital products. Like that sounds like work. And anything that sounds like work tends to not work out in the long run. So there's tremendous weight into finding something that you feel playful about and doubling down into that. Then to your point around kind of sparkling different pieces of content, I do think this is incredibly important as well, because if all you talk about is a single kind of area and you're kind of position yourself as, like this, book of knowledge just about this one thing, that's not very different from just picking up a textbook, because I don't think people follow, well, first of all, people follow people, in my opinion, not necessarily people follow topics. And there is much more nuance to a personality that makes a person interesting, that actually inspires followership, where it's like, this is my area of expertise and 70% of my content is going to be about that. But there's also some personal, and there's also some observations, and there's something like here, there, and the other thing that makes your overall personality attractive. So whatever niche we are choosing, it's important to stay consistent with it, because at the end of the day, people need to know what you're about. And it's like, everyone needs to be able to describe what is that you actually do and specialize in. But if that's the only thing you do, then that's going to be boring. So we got to stick to it, but we got to do so much more.
Yeah. I think the glue between these different perspectives is the story overall. Like your story, you are the niche. Okay, even if you talk about one thing, what makes that unique? It's how it applied to your life and how it helped you. That's what the way that I like to frame it when people ask, like, oh, okay, well, other people are talking about this too. How do I stand out from them if I'm giving the same information, right? Because there's maybe a few ways to weave a basket, but let's say there's one way to weave a basket. What makes me different from the next person talking about this? And it would be your story and who you relate with. So tying all those things together, it's okay. Interests combined with the pain points in your life that those solved and led to the story that you have now combined. To bridge into what product or service people should start with, these may combine. I'll go into both of these questions at the same time. What product or service should people consider doing first? And if people don't know what interests or topics to pursue, what do you recommend?
You'd have to start with the latter question before you can answer the former, because you can't start monetizing until you actually have a clear understanding of who you are and your value proposition. I think that first point just goes back to, you got to do what you just, if you're a polymath and you have 15 different things, try all of them to a varying degree, and you'll see what hits, both from a market perspective, but also an internal alignment perspective. And so you've got to do that work first to understand who you want to be, and that can change at any time. But initially, you've got to do that work. And then from there, if I were to attempt to give a prescription on how someone might monetize, because we're all just looking for a formula, I would give the surest bet way to build a long-term sustainable business is actually to start with just booking coaching calls or some sort of consulting. And so what we'll see a lot of successful people on Stan do is Stan has an integrated calendar booking feature, right? People use it for digital products, courses, community, what have you. But the people who really set themselves up for success will say, hey, I don't know what to productize yet. I'm going to do the hard work to really understand my customer and specifically really understand what they will pay me for. So they'll throw up like a 30, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. It's not even about the money. It's about the feeling of, first of all, like someone on the internet randomly giving you money and like, holy crap, that's amazing. Crazy. Why would they do that? But then beyond that, it's about the learning, right? You're getting paid in the learning insights, because what you're doing is you're booking your first 5 clients in some sort of way, whether it's web design that you want to productize later, or it's career coaching, or it's fitness training. It's like I need to talk to someone and go through the journey with them of like helping them through whatever the journey of transformation I'm giving them, and understand like why they're trying to buy from me, what their exact pain point is, and then I'm going to use the pattern matching because I'm going to book 5 to 10 clients, and then I'll be able to say, oh wait, 3 out of 5 of these clients came to me for X specific reason. This is now what I'm going to productize. And so that would be my personal recommendation on, first of all, because the other friction piece is like, if you want to sell a product, you got to make it. Like making a course, making a guide, making an ebook, whatever you want to do takes effort. I would rather you instead get started today, make some money, get some easy wins, and then use that to scale over time. And so from there, the SKUs, like the options in which someone can sell a product or a service at scale, is like almost infinite. And so what we, sorry guys, just a sec. And so what we'll see pretty often is, sorry, I just got cut off. And so what we'll see pretty often is anything from like a short little mini course and like a video course, which you offer, for example, or it's something like a community, because hey, like I worked with a couple clients and I actually really enjoy the person interaction. How do I scale this over time? I can start with group coaching cohorts, or I can do a hosted community within Stan, like whatever that is. You can do all of those things, but it's really just like where you want to take your business. But the SKUs are courses, ebooks, communities. I really personally love templates. Like we all have some sort of, like to me, Cortex is like your process and template for how you've created stuff, and you can swear by that process. And the same way for me, like my resume was my template. It was like proven credibility. Like I literally used this resume to get a job at Goldman Sachs. Like I'm not saying it's the best one. It's just like my personal resume template, and it'll help get you started. So those would be my recommendations.
Yeah, I'll tack on to that with Stan. The one thing I discovered it this year or last year when you guys reached out, but I wish I discovered it earlier if it was around when I was starting. But the one thing I really like about it is almost the first thing you see when you log in is just you have like 5 or 6 options. You have digital product, you have the coaching call, you have the community, you have whatever it may be. You give people the options where people aren't going into Stripe checkout and building something else on the side. And it's just so easy to go in and it's like, oh, okay, I can name this coaching call, write the copy for it, just pain point what I offer, and then just start testing the waters. It's as simple as that, right? The simplest way to start a business, which I really like. And the people that I've referred to it have also really liked it. So props, I will undying support, link in the description. But along with that, like just go log in to Stan, find something that you want to create, name it, write something for it. Don't overcomplicate it. If you need help with like a framework for writing the copy, just Google copywriting frameworks. Just try it out, experiment. From there, that's kind of your source of truth for the main interest that you're talking about. You need to teach more around that, build authority around that thing, hit pain points around that thing, and then pitch. And that's a difficult part for a lot of people, but you just do it. And then eventually you get used to it. You get a payment and you're like, oh crap, that worked. But back to that topic, if you had something to say, I could remember after my rant.
There's something I've been thinking about. Was recently catching up with Conrad from Teachable, and one of the things he shared that's really stuck with me is he said, Vitalii, one of the most irrational things people do, they finish recording a course before they start selling it. He said, you do it completely the other way. You make a first few lessons, you sell it, you drip it over time where the lesson comes out like every week. You survey your customers like after the first like lectures, like, hey, like, did you like it? What do you think is coming next? What they think is coming next is what you make content about. And then you finish the product. And a lot of people go into like, I need to do this, 2 months intensive, and it's like record this 15,000 module thing. And it's like, no, you start with a 2-page PDF, like you see who is going to trust you by leaving their email, and it's like getting something for free for $20. Like you don't start with anything complex to begin with. And then you see what people are willing to pay anything for, and then you build up on that over time.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I do. I think it blows a lot of people's minds when I tell them like what my strategy is. And it's like, I have the outline of what I want to sell, but I know from experience that that may not be the right thing. And I don't even know if people will pay for it. So the first thing that comes for me is the landing page. which can be complex if you want to go that deep into it. But I'll go straight for the landing page because then I know that I control the offer there, right? Because that's what people are buying. I can create the copy for the landing page, make it very enticing, of course, within the realm of what I can build, and then start selling that. And then once I get a payment and I have a deadline for when that thing needs to be out, like it's going out. I don't have any other option, right? A lot of people, they don't have that deadline or urgency. So they like build something for 2 months and then they never end up even telling people about it, when it can be the complete opposite way. It's just like start selling and then build it.
This actually goes back to your point around building community in a tribe. I think I grew up as an only child, and so maybe this informs it for me, but like, I think we're so used to working in isolation. Maybe it's our perfectionism. Like I have to make it perfect and work on it for 3 months before anyone can see my baby. But if you have the awareness around like, wait, there are people in my corner. There are literally people that follow me that clearly want to hear something from me. Like how can I get them more involved in the process earlier? You end up being more successful. You accelerate your timelines. So that's how I draw that back.
Nice. Yes. Okay. To transition into something that I feel like a lot of people will get value out of, even just to think about. We just talked about, okay, if we actually boil it down, you have everything you need to make it as a creator. We went over that. Now, once people have an audience, we're in this space, this digital space where distribution is extremely important. And if you have distribution, you have a lot of leverage. You can do something more if you want to. So for the people that want to take it further, startup, software, physical products, something where you need a team, you need to expand, that's what we're going to dive into. When we visited you in Toronto, you told us, or first you turned us on to your engineering manifesto, and I believe this was a part of it, but I just know it's a goal of yours that you want to build $1 billion company with 10 engineers. Let's dissect that. But first, what's the motivation? Why $1 billion? Is it just because like unicorn, that's what I want to get to, or is there something deeper?
It's the billion as a number is frankly trivial. I don't know if it means more than that to you. It's like in some ways like it's a currency that describes kind of the degree of achievement. But John and I are investing the best years of our life into doing something, and one of the things we want to do is we create as much value as possible, and I'd like to make the most of it, and billion sounded like a good number to start with. So that's where the billion came from. The 10 engineers is a little bit more involved because I formulated a very strong opinion because I've seen a lot of things that are done wrong in tech specifically. And well, first of all, it's hot take. I think tech companies are extremely overstaffed. What Twitter did a couple of years ago at this point, reducing the 90% headcount and staying afloat and innovating from there at a much more rapid pace, like at its fundamentals, I think it sent a very strong first principle signal of what it actually takes to build software. And then if you start building from there, and it's like, well, how does it actually the process of building works? You would actually realize that like at the most foundational level, you just need one person to build software. Like these days, software engineering is so straightforward. Like you really need to know so little to build software. It's incredible. So you just start with one person. And then because you wanted to take care of kind of reliability and redundancy and make sure that, something happens, you have systems in place that will ensure that the business continues to prosper. 10 feels like a good number. And kind of coming back to our track record, I think we have one of the most feature-rich software that we built in 3 years, like all-in-one creator store. We have all the features that matter. And we still don't have 10 engineers, by the way, 8 to this day, wow. Two slots open. So if, engineers are watching, hiring. So we are just being very, very intentional about understanding what does it actually take to get to the goal and not being distracted by solving arbitrary problems such as like, let's hire a big team and let's spend time managing them and let's like deal with all these HR situations. And it's like, we know what we need. We know how to get there. We focus on hiring best in class and it works remarkably well.
Awesome. Question around that. I have a lot of questions around that. how do I frame this? When you're trying to get to that 1 billion with the constraint of 10 engineers, I know you mentioned this briefly, but how do you go about identifying and narrowing in on those main things that will lead to where you want to go? Like the problems or what you need to build, rather than, because I think a common problem is just like, okay, let's not solve this problem. Let's just go. It's just features, putting in features. How do you avoid that?
You start with the customer first. I think that mistakes that a lot of companies do, they are overly passionate about the customer, and like especially technical leaders run teams, they like get excited about technology, not realizing that technology is just the means to the end, and like in the end of the day, like anything worth existing exists to serve humans. Our number one cultural value is creator first, and very intentionally the number one value, because everything that we do comes from spending so much time in the presence of the customer, like, and being creators ourselves. So we really understand what the pain points are, and we listen to creators a lot. We don't do most of the time everything that's being asked, but we try to understand what pain point and problem that they're having, and then we kind of put our judgment and understanding of the world around it and translate it into software. One of the very tactical examples there is, like, for years, folks have been asking us to build more flexible landing pages. And if you notice, like, our landing pages are extremely simple. Yeah. And it's like literally a rich text editor, like that's it. You can't even move the order around. Number one, because we optimized everything out. Like, we just know that those pages convert the best, believe it or not. And number two, because we tried to build flexible pages twice at this point. And what we've seen is the one thing that happens is that people spend so much time trying to perfect their landing page and move things around. They don't finish it. They're like death by complexity. Like, it hurts them. And we're just like, well, I mean, we can build the world's best, landing page editor, except the world doesn't need another one. So we're focused much more on what the customer is actually trying to do. And for us, like, we are in business of making them the most amount of money possible. So it's like, let us solve that problem and let our track record to speak for itself. And once you adopt this mindset, you actually eliminate a lot of work for yourself, because it's like, we are not here building features, we are here solving problems. And we spend more time thinking about the problems that are worth our time solving. That allows us to just save a lot of time and go much farther by not doing things than by doing them well.
How do you filter for what customers want and what customers need? Like, how did you make that decision? Was it just trial and error and data and seeing what happened with the complex landing pages not leading to results, therefore leading to potential churn? Or is it more so like you holding a firm belief in just sticking to those guns, being polarizing in software in a sense?
There's two things I think are foundationally important. Number one, you need to have an opinion on what good looks like, because like John and I kind of come from the world of understanding software, and it's like having a vision of what what good software experience is. So we're kind of coming to every conversation with that foundation. The second thing is such a straightforward point. So many people miss to do this right, is like really spending excessive amount of time in the presence of the customer talking to them. Because, like, for example, if you start taking shortcuts and it's like, let me just do a pop-up, or let me send a survey, and like, let me give them a multiple choice, or it's like a long form, doesn't really matter. So much information can be gathered in the nuance of the conversation. And it's like not just what people say, but how people say it, what they don't say, like the tone that they're using. And it's like, even if you're just watching someone setting up their stand store, like for the first time live, and just seeing them, and it's like, they just duplicated the page, and it's like it appeared at the bottom, and they need to scroll it, and then they like get lost. They would never mention it because it's a minor point to them, but it's like, we just wasted 10 minutes trying to find something that needs to be like literally in front of you. Let's go and fix that. So number one, to have an opinion of what good looks like, and intentionally spending time into educating yourself on how to get that better. Like, we don't live in a cave, the world evolves. And number two, spending excessive amount of time like listening in the presence of your customer.
And number two is now attention that you and I both struggle. Like we have to be hyper intentional about still having, because the challenge is, and you'll see this with like United Airlines or Comcast, like when you think of like awful customer support experiences or customer experiences in general that like want to make you blow your brains out, I would argue one of the reasons why is because the organization is stratified to such a hierarchy, which comes with hiring too many people and not being efficient as an organization. But how often is the CEO like literally in the pain gutters talking to customers? And that's something that we think about very often as we think about leadership, because you have so many stakeholders at some point in scale. It gets really complex in a fun but hard way, where you start to think about like, what is the most scalable use of my time, right? How do I have the most leverage or impact? And when you kind of think about, I can affect these 20,000 people by spending my zero-sum time and attention to focus on this specific initiative, versus like, I should go talk to like one person in the trenches and spend 30 minutes really thoughtfully getting to know them. It's hard to make that equation often balance, but it goes back to that old startup saying, it's like, do things that don't scale in order to scale. There are certain things that we make sure to do in our time to make sure that we have unscalable time, because we believe that that anchor and that route is worthwhile to take us back to our customer. So whether that's interviewing customers or us taking the inefficient, unscalable time to make content ourselves, because like we live and breathe this, like we bleed with our customers. We understand how you feel because we're literally right there next to you. Like that is so worth it to us. So.
And one more thing to add to this is you got to use your own product.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Danny, you're using Cortex every day. John and I use Stan every day, and there's just nothing comparable to this experience where you're just kind of going in and you're trying to do something, like you have an intent, and then you have tension created by software. It's like, I want to get things done at the speed of my thought, and it's like, if I need to open an app, that's already difficult enough.
That brings up the core product principle we talk about very often, which is the core job to be done, which really answers your true question, which is like, how do you tease out which features on the infinite list of features that you could ship for Cortex? How do you pick which one you want to ship? And so, because people will be like, I want custom landing pages, and I totally go out, because like I'm like, dude, I want custom landing pages, right? But it's like, what is the core job to be done? And for us, the core job to be done is our guarantee that there is no platform out there where you will make more money. And so, if that is why people sign up for us, and we are going to optimize the heck out of your business for you, and that is our job to be done, that also gets you clarity on like, because you mentioned software, like we get so obsessed with the technology, but the software is actually friction. The software is a medium through which to achieve the core job to be done. I would argue that if we completely wiped out the software and just like had an AI agent who did everything for you and just made you money, like you would probably sign up for that over having to set up the software yourself. That's like another way to think about how should I prioritize my feature set on my roadmap.
Nice. I really like that. I'm taking that to heart. Core job to be done. Okay. So along with that, with just amount of features that you can build and which ones you have to build, I'm assuming that with the restraint of 10 engineers, that's one of the things. And you only have so much manpower to do those things, so you're even more forced to be focused. With that, since there are so few in conventional terms, they have to be good. So I want to talk about hiring a bit, but I want to start by demystifying it, because knowing my audience and knowing my past self, hiring was the scariest thing for me. I know that I became like the one-person business guy for a decent amount of time on YouTube. The main reason behind that is because I just didn't know how the fuck to hire. Like I didn't know what to do, right? So I'm like, that was my constraint, and I think it helped me a lot because I put it off for the longest amount of time, is I just didn't know how. It's like, okay, Fiverr, Upwork, probably not going to get me anywhere for big tasks or things that I need people for. So let's start with the question, when should people think about hiring? If we're going from creator, one-person business to, okay, I have a more complex product that I want to put out, when along that journey?
You will feel it. You will literally feel the pain of it. You will feel so overwhelmed. And it's that moment that I think we all get a little frazzled. And by the way, you'll feel the pain in different stages as your organization grows. But you will hit this moment where you're like just too overwhelmed. And the first few times you will persist through that. But at some point, something will feel like it's breaking. And that's where it's really important to ask really intentional questions about hiring. So that everyone, I think you have to earn your stripes on hiring. You have to make a ton of mistakes to really, but ideally to help people eat shit a little bit less. Sorry, can I swear? Please, I think this will help you eat a little bit less shit. Is get hyper intentional on what are the jobs to be done by these new hires. As in, your job as a creator and the founder and entrepreneur of your own business is to maximize the value you give to your business, aka operate within your zones of genius. And so one of my zones of genius is not like, making Canva graphics or like responding to specific kinds of emails. And so what we should think of, or like scheduling calls, right? So like whatever that thing is, basically if you write the top 2 things you're fantastic at doing, I say 2 and usually not even 3, those are the things you should maniacally be obsessing over those and how you can spend almost all of your time doing those. And then you write out the 17,000 things that I know for a fact you dislike doing, whatever those are. And then those are what you should hire for. And so very tactically speaking, from a solopreneur or creator's job perspective, I think one of the first key hires is just some sort of executive assistant. And that can take the form of anything, whether it's if you don't like writing captions yourself, or you don't like checking email or booking, like whatever that is, or negotiating, what have you. There's so many random things like the crud of running the back end of a business that we don't even think about when we start it. Just write those down and then get hyper clear, like do the visual exercises, close your eyes and be like, if I hired someone, what would success look like? And literally describe it to like a joyful degree. Like they are so good at responding to emails that they respond to it like immediately with the exact copy and tone and whatever that I'm looking for, like whatever that is, and write those out as job characteristics. Because the first time we hire, oftentimes we're like, we don't know what we're doing and we're overwhelmed. Like this random friend, like, please come help me. Or like whoever's like the first person raising their hand, like, please come help me. But ideally you're hyper intentional about, number one, will I get along with this person? Which is what we talk about. Like, do we share the same core values? Do I respect this person in terms of the values that we share? Because that means we'll probably want to work together. Like, you don't want to work with someone you dislike. It's just not going to work. And then, are they functionally the best person possible that I can hire that will actually do these job requirements to the degree that I specifically need? And so that'll help you minimize your chances of failure with a hire. Because hiring can work out like beyond your expectations, or it can really not work out. So,
yeah,
I have a ton of thoughts on this. So I'm going to.
He does. He has a ton of thoughts.
I spend 70% of my time thinking about hiring and practicing it in different manifestations. I'm gonna say something that I might regret saying for all the other customers that I'm working with. Then I had the best experience ever onboarding something of your caliber is onboarding you to Stan. And I think part of that reason is actually how you operate, and it's like how small your team is like on the content front, because to my understanding it is just yourself. And it's when we are working with someone who is of your size, there is usually like a lot of bureaucracy. Like there is talk to my assistant, and then we're going to review, and then we're going to like all learn together, and then we are going to like hand off, and then it will like take a month, and then we'll have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And when we got connected, like I still remember I had tremendously busy weekend, and it's like we got connected Thursday, Friday, and it's like we shared some ideas, and it's like what to do, the Loom conversation, and then I'm checking up first things on Monday. It's like, okay, I need to get back to Dan, and it's like help him through the next steps, and I'm just logging into your account, and it's like 3 products, $10,000, like everything is firing. I'm like, what is going on there? And I think the reason is because I think people have this very strong misconception that more people is the better. Like more people is not the better. Growth is not proportional to headcount, like by a long shot, in my opinion, reversely proportional after a certain threshold. And for example, when we had experience and hopefully you felt good about how quickly we turned the Loom embeds for you. And if like you think about how things like this get done, is because when John told me that he wanted Loom, I just picked up the phone, called the engineer that I knew like spent a lot of time in this area, and it's like, hey, I need this in 2 hours. Can we get it done? It got done in 2 hours. We did the thing for you, and then we just let's fucking go.
I thought we were so badass for that, by the way. For everyone's for your context, for everyone's context, Dan was basically just like, I want to make sure I have Loom embeds in the course. It was like, oh, and I remember you telling me that, and I was like, cool, I'll run that by Vitalii. And then Vitalii just shipped it like literally that day. Mm-hmm. And that speaks towards the agility of an organization we would like to keep as we continue to scale. And that's that's like the cultural organizational question that we're asking now at 40 something people, eventually 100 something people for different reasons and different parts of the organization. But like, we're really proud of that kind of agility that we like to bring. So.
And it's in the culture, it's a choice to operate that way. Many people intentionally choose not to operate that way, partly because they don't know any better. But to tactically kind of answer your question, like, how do you get into hiring, is like, you need to get dragged into it. Like, if it's like, let me just hire because I feel like I need help, like, you will spend more time educating and it's like servicing that help than you actually need. So you hold back as long as you need to.
Awesome. Let's go over, so you say 40 employees total. Break down the structure of those. So 8, 10, or engineers. What are the rest?
Yeah, it's all about, so I'm getting everyone a mental model that I think a lot about, which is just like a factory line, or like the concept of bottlenecks. And so the reason why we can be so thoughtful and pared back on engineering is because of how much leverage does code have. Theoretically, one person, like we talk a lot about now in AI, like one person billion-dollar businesses might occur. I think some version of that is totally true with agents. Like theoretically, a single person can write code that scales to the entirety of humanity, right? That's just like technically possible. And so code, we can be hyper disciplined because we have really clear clarity on like how we can scale. And so the rest of the organization ends up being the things that are harder to scale, the things that are more human, are closer to the human. So require more nuance, that are harder to therefore systematize or programatize. And so the answer there is you've got the engineering team, you've got some product help, right? Someone's got to design the wireframes and think about how do we build the most beautiful store themes for folks. And so that organization is what? How many people total, the product organization?
Like a dozen?
Yeah, a dozen. And so you do the math on a dozen minus 40, basically 2/3 of the organization is on the business side. Because like you alluded to before, distribution is everything. And so when it comes to how we work with humans, it's a marketing, sales, and support and service question. And so one of the things we're really proud of, for example, and it's just like, it comes from my experience working in client service, like that kind of job, is like, I'm really proud of how great our support and service is. Like you can email them a question anytime, they'll get back to you in less than an hour, and it's a real human being. It's not one of those auto journey tickets. And that's just like a hill we've chosen to die on. Like we could run a much more profitable, efficient business in whatever way if we just like had a shitty, clunky AI agent or a call center or whatever that was outsourced. So probably at least 1/3 of our employees are on the support side, purely just like supporting our customers who are getting started.
Oh, more than a half, like probably like actually the same amount as the number of employees. We have a lot of support folks.
Yeah. So it's the full-time support folks are like 15 or so, and then sorry, do you want to give context?
Okay, so just building on John's point, that the support organization is something we are incredibly proud of and been very intentional about, and actually what I'm realizing is a big differentiation for Stan. Yeah. Because then it's like any competitor, like if you have a problem, how many organizations can just with confidence tell you, we are going to get back to you in an hour? Not with like a random, hey, we are going to get back to you sometime, never. But like with a solution, like a personalized Loom, literally solving your problem. So the internal team of support is about kind of 10 folks, and this is kind of the brain of the support operation that runs the support systems. And we have a few dozen contractors that kind of work in different time zones, so we can hold up to that promise.
Totally. That's a good nuance. So basically, the 40 is full-time employees that are salaried and payrolled, and of that, still, like, 1/3 of those employees are just to focus on service and support because we got 60,000 people, and our job is to help them be as successful as possible. So it's not just like the triaging of like a technical thing that they need help with, but also like one of our favorites is just like, hey, you need help monetizing? Yeah, we'll help you come up with a strategy, and we'll do that for people that are just starting. And so that's 1/3. So 2/3 basically, and now you have the last third, which is focused on growing the company. And so this is the lens of like the content team. So we've got incredible creators who are on staff who like make content for Stan. Like if you don't follow us on Instagram, like I think it's worthwhile. Like you'll learn a lot about how to market actually. That is probably half of that team, and then the other half is our team that works on like larger partnerships. So getting to work with you, getting to work with other creators that we respect from both a success perspective, but also like a values and mission alignment perspective is something that's really important to us. And so that's the organization today. And so as we think about scaling, ideally we anchor to just a 10-person engineering team, because you have the thing about a 10x engineer is they're 1,000x better than the average employee. Right, because of the leverage of code. You can also say the same about creators and creative talent in that way. And so where we'll start to scale from, let's say 40 to 100, will be in a lot of these like operational things that we haven't figured out how to automate yet in some sort of way.
Yeah.
To introduce maybe another way to break this down is that what scales indefinitely is technology. John's first point. What doesn't scale at all actually is human connection. And the more humans we are in service of, right now 60,000 is going to be 600,000, then it's going to be 6 million onwards. Like this is where the humans like needs to come in, and this is where the organization is going to indefinitely grow to provide the level of service that we need to. I think there's a lot of I don't want to call it uninformed opinions, but opinions that I don't agree with. That, like, for example, AI is going to solve like a ton of problems. Then I don't know if you ever tried like introducing AI to your content in some shape or form to like maybe get more efficient. Like very like questionable outcomes. And there's like plenty of companies trying to solve the support function by introducing the AI, and they're kind of solving for a customer that asks like a stupid thing that you can look up on Google. Customers that matter to you don't ask those kind of questions. And it's like, you can scale it this way. So Stan will continue to grow from the headcount perspective in the human connection kind of areas, whether it's content, whether it's marketing, whether it's support. But the technology part, and this is kind of the vision of it, is likely going to stay like small, closer to the size. Like it will grow as needed, but significantly at a slower pace than the other organizations.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed with AI is it's very helpful for inspiration and creativity, at least in like writing content, creating content, but to even think about it taking over my content for me and just being like someone who acts in the background, even an agent, I don't really care how good it gets. That takes a lot of the joy of it away from me. And right now it could absolutely not do what I do because I've tried. Like my prompts are insane for me trying to replicate what I've done. So I agree. I don't know where it's going to go. It'll be fascinating and be really cool, but I like that. Let's talk about where to find these 10x engineers or just 10x people in general. Because I guess for creators, as we grow, you have a very wide network that you can kind of throw a net into. But either with that or alongside it, how do you go about that, finding people?
I'll start with the broad, and then I bet you have really great advice on specifically finding 10x engineers. So we'll tackle the problem the way that we always try to tackle problems, which is from a first principles basis. So the question you posed is, how do you find 10x people? And so I'm going to work backwards and be like, well, so the question is like, how do we attract then 10x people and convince them to join this organization? And so then I'm like, if I put myself in the shoes of my ideal customer persona, in this case, which is the 10x person, what are the attributes they're looking for in terms of the work they want to do? And so they want to work with the very best people. They want to work on something that's meaningful, fulfilling to them, and they want to make a ton of money and have a ton of financial upside. And so we've reverse engineered those things to offer that to the market, right? Because for us nowadays, the way that we make the most impact and actually help our customers the most is hiring. Like our job is about hiring people even better than us who can do an even better job for our customers. Like it's a crazy way to think about the world rather than like, I need to solve a problem. It's like, no, my job now is to go find awesome people that I want to work with that like also will just do incredible things for people. And so in that, when we think about our marketing message for actually like going out and hiring 10x people, the number one thing that everyone knows us in the market for is we pay top of market cash and equity compensation. Like for anyone, we guarantee you that there's no other company of our size and stage, what have you, that pays better than us. Like if you can find someone, let us know. Like if you work at Stan, you can find anyone who has a bit higher salary, like let us know, we'll comp you better. Because our belief is that if we're doing a good job hiring 10x people who really truly care, who are good, kind people, who work really hard, really talented, like it'll pay for itself, dude. Like we're not worried about that. And so that there, paired with the mission of what we do, like we're really, really mission forward and mission first in like everything we think about. Like it's why we still wake up and hustle the way that we do. Like, dude, this is so cool. Like the amount of random people that we get to see who are just hardworking, passionate people who get to succeed. Like this is the joy of like even the content you create and the outcomes you've created for people. And so that is fulfilling work. And then on top of that, just like the ownership we give people to like, yo, just come join, be your own entrepreneur, create your own legacy, like be really proud of what you've done. That's kind of like the value prop. If you think if we're selling Stan as a product, like working at Stan as the product, the value prop are many of those attributes. And so from there, then it's once again a marketing problem, right? You're just marketing the company you're working at. And so how do you get the voice out? Like you can either go outbound, traditional sales, one-to-one cold email, what have you, or you can market in different ways. So it's like whether I'm talking about our company in my content, what have you. It's just like you're productizing a company, not on the product level, but on the company level, and marketing that to the very best people that you want to like work with. Yeah. That's like a high level way to think about it. And Vitalii will have even better advice.
So you, like to summarize that, you're kind of thinking of Stan as the offer for these people. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah.
The thing that I want to add is before we talk about finding the 10x, let's define 10x people, and I'll intentionally steer higher level from engineering, because the concept of a 10x person I think applies to every industry out there. And my definition of it is, so number one is a 10x person has range, meaning that they are not like single-threaded people who can do just one part of the job. Like oftentimes that's very limiting. That doesn't allow them to contribute to the degree necessary. And I'll share an example in a moment. Another property that is important for a 10x person is when I am in the room with someone, at the very least, there needs to be an expert that I'm going to learn from. Like, no one works at Stan that we get to spend personal time with that we are not learning from. Back to the range example, design is a very interesting space. So maybe let me share a few ideas on with designers. Design is one of the easiest industries to get into. You just take a course on Udemy, sign up for Figma, and then you can call yourself a designer. Most people in the world are probably like half X designers, or just like 0.3X designers, because once you start talking to them about solving a problem that is design related, you just start to see very quickly that there's just a lot of things that they don't notice that are obvious to kind of your trained eye that like an expert or a 10x person should be aware of. And there's many skills kind of involved there. Like between UI and UX, like I firmly believe that designers need to be both UI and UX and really understand both well, because one doesn't exist without another. For designers who are 10x, they would also be exceptional at copy, for example, because for you to get down to something that you can actually, like as an engineer, to take over and ship, you can just let me work with the designer and then coordinate with the copywriter, and then something is not going to work out because the copy is so long, so they're going to get back. And it's like, hey, if you're in charge, please be in charge of the whole thing so that I can kind of take it over and implement. Engineering, same idea about range. Front and back end infrastructure, cloud, security, like all of this needs to be within the skill set of a person operating something, because this ability allows you to get things done quickly. The most important thing, and I think you would appreciate with this, because I might have read this particular term from you actually. It's time to value. How long? No?
Not me.
Okay. How long does it take you to get from an idea to like the thing that is actually live? Applies to any area. 10x is about that. 10x is about that in minutes. 10x is about that in hours. 10x is that by the end of the day. People who are not 10x would need weeks, months, whatever.
Yeah. Would you, so a part of Valve, the company's employee handbook, they say they only hire T-shaped people. What that means is like they're specialized in one thing, but they're also generalists. They have like the umbrella of the surrounding skills that makes them exceptional. Is that kind of how you define someone that's 10x? Because I know you also, I don't know if you only hire full stack engineers, right?
Yeah. I never thought about it in terms of like the T-shape, but it does come down to the T-shape, because you have to have a significant vertical part of the T to be an expert in your area of the craft. But you also need to have an extremely wide horizontal part of the T to be able to be competent and like get other things done, like that are actually required to complete this entirely, like in a way by yourself. So very much so.
Nice. Okay. Let's round hiring off with just the general hiring process, right? How do you filter people? Is there questions, interviews? Do you do anything different, unique? Is there anything that you hate about traditional hiring processes that you just avoid?
So I'll start with first this term of process. Should we? Would you mind? Sorry.
Oh, right. Just a leaf blower.
Then may I touch on? I realized that I didn't answer what the question was actually about. Is where to find where to find the 10x folks. On finding 10x people, I was actually reflecting on how we met. Maybe a story for another time, but John and I knew each other for a month before we decided to stand together.
Like we basically got married. Yeah, I didn't even realize at the time.
And well, in my opinion, John is like not even 10x, like 1,000x person, like incredibly capable in so many areas. And you know, three 10x people at least around this table. But the way that introduction came about, like we didn't know each other, didn't hear of each other. A shared customer introduced us. I was building another software product at the time. John started working on Stan, and one day I got a call and it's like, hey, I know this guy John. He's building something similar, looking for a technical co-founder. Would you like to have a conversation? And then we had a conversation, and I think saw something very impressive in each other that made us make a bet to at least explore more and spend more time. But the foundational idea there is 10x people are extremely hard to come across. Like it's not just you saying it's like, hey, I have all these expectations and requirements, like apply here. People won't apply. Like people who are actually 10x don't even have time to apply. Like opportunities come to them, you need to go after them. And the most certain way to get there, in my opinion, is through introductions. And it's like introductions and referrals is the work that you need to put in, because every single person, like literally every single person, knows at least one 10x player, which is like might not necessarily even be in their area of expertise, but it's like someone who is so impressive. I am so grateful to know them. And hiring those people just comes down to you establishing a discipline and consistency, like with everything around, just going around and pinging your network. And it's like, I'm looking for this. Do you know someone you are thinking highly of? And being very committed to the process. One of the most impressive things that our support team actually done recently, Q4 hired 15 folks, 13 of them came through referrals. The highest retention and success rates we are seeing, absolutely remarkable. Referrals straight up.
Tactically, what that is literally you just ask the friend you're most impressed by, hey, who are all the smartest people you know that you're impressed by and you like as people? You go out and you talk to them, and some of them, like most of them likely won't be a fit for some certain reason, but then you ask them the same question and you just compound that flywheel. So that's the tactical answer.
Yeah. And I mean, it probably becomes a lot easier when the offer of Stan to
Exactly.
come and join is
Exactly.
better, right? If you're trying to do that when you don't have something to give or something that's better or something worth their time, then may not turn out how you like it.
And that's the initial hump of entrepreneurship, is you're just fighting this uphill battle.
Yeah.
And then over time, as you're accruing more value to your value prop, then it like gets a little bit easier to roll the ball.
Yeah,
right.
That makes sense. One thing that I do in my free time, this is like my guilty pleasure, is just reading self-help books on the routines of creative people. Like really dissecting, like, okay, here's all of these successful people. What are their routines? How often do they work? What do they do at certain times of the day? What do they do? What have they produced? So there's clearly way two different sides of the spectrum. There's someone like Charles Darwin who would work in like 2-hour blocks separated by long walks, and he produced 19 books in his lifetime and developed the theory of evolution. I'm assuming he was like on his own by himself. Then there's some people call it whatever you want to call it, hustle culture, or just like working all the time, super long days. You live in a box. Like the memes about the like all dudes need is like the TV and the lawn chair. I completely agree, but and that's like what you do. You get up, you work, and then you go to bed. So where do you guys fall on the spectrum? How long do you work, and has it changed over time?
I think I can answer this in a way that will be even more helpful to people, which is I would tell them all the things that I do that are not good for me, for my routine. As in, well, what you're implying through that spectrum is everyone has a different style and a creative style, whether it's literally the rhythm of the circadian rhythm of like when they should be creating it in the morning, like, or like 2 a.m. at night. Like some people are like, dude, I need it to be completely quiet. Everyone's gone, what have you. For me personally, I'm one of those people, the best way to describe it is in college, I never understood how someone could just like rail an Adderall and write an entire essay the night before. Like I literally can't do that. I would just be like, this is, and so what I would have to do is I would write like 2 sentences every day on an essay for like 3 weeks. And that's just personally my creative process. I just work best that way. And so how that translates in the real world is like, every single day, I need to basically ideally start my day without my phone, without checking Slack, without checking email, what have you. And instead spend the first 2 hours internalizing the idea that like, hey, what's going to happen is I'm going to have 10 minutes of creative spark, and that's going to be 4 weeks worth of effort. But like, I just need to like have the repetition of going about that every single day. So that's my process. And so I'll share with you where I get in my own way, which is one, it is so easy to just get sucked into the urgent. And this is something Vitali's been a great partner on. He's always pushing me on this. Is like, John, do you really need to be taking this call yourself, or do you need to be thinking higher level for us? And so Slack and email, we like develop this dopamine addiction, especially when you come from the trauma of the industries I came from in finance and working all day. But you start to have this sinister outlook where hustle culture is very important to some degree of like, I do believe in order to have outsized outcomes or something worth having, you have to work hard. But it's up to a certain degree where my mental model for too long has been an input-output thing of like work hours, where like because I used to work 100-hour weeks in finance because I was doing like drone level stuff, I equate with like, oh, I need to be grinding and plugged in for 100 hours to have output. And instead, if I had like the scale I'm operating at now, where it's almost entirely about creativity in some ways, I would be better off just going to Bali for 3 weeks and surfing and not working at all. And then like randomly, like after paddling back from a wave, having 2 minutes of an insight, because that's how much leverage the creativity that I create now has. Obviously, am I doing that? No, I'm like hustling a little bit too much in some ways. And so I would share that as a paradigm for people to think about is like, there's a quote once again from Naval, it's like work like a lion, not like a cow. And finding your balance with your reality of the moment of what that relationship should be, and then being really maniacal about saying no to things and focusing, that would be the formula for success that I personally wish I followed more. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, perhaps unpopular opinion these days, I work all the time. Like I work days, I work nights, I work weekends.
I think that's why we get along so well. It's like one of the things we have a lot of mutual respect for. So.
But there is a detail to this, and I think that's an important enabling detail, because I work differently from most of people, and over time I've learned to hold myself accountable to where the value actually is. Because the way I define work is not just 15,000 items checklist. It's like making concrete, measurable, and tangible progress in the areas that matter. And everything that you do in your life should be supporting your ability to do that. This morning, for example, I woke up before my alarm at 5:30, and I was like, let me just go for a drive. I love driving. Driving in LA is like super fun, especially like before the traffic, like morning sunrise. And it's like, I took 1.5-hour drive just around the area, and I spent all this time kind of morning dreaming, let's call it, just thinking and envisioning and just being in my zone, thinking about what the future could look like if we get those things. And they helped me build clarity. Like, do you call this work? Like, I call this work. It informs the work that I'm doing, and it kind of puts you in different contexts that allow you to be productive from the point of view, not of like how much actually things you complete, but how much progress you make in the direction that you've established for yourself. Another component that I think is interesting that enables me to do this is the topic of work-life balance is very difficult, and I've struggled with this when I tried to actually find that balance. And it's like there needs to be personal things and there needs to be professional things. I was like, my life is work, and my identity is very tied to like what I create and the impact that I'm making, and repositioning yourself to doing things like because you want to and how you want to, and structuring your life that enables you to do this. One of the prerequisites for me was learning how to trust people to make mistakes, because everyone who is any good at what they do have incredibly high standard for the quality of their work. And then as you start leading and managing people, and you have like dozens of people at different levels of skill set to do things on your behalf, it's like some of this is just not good enough. And you can say, well, let me just go in and it's like with my hands just do it better because I can. But then you're taking away an opportunity from a person to learn. And then learning is what creates down the line leverage for you that enables you to do even less work of that kind, so you can do even more work of the kind that is truly fulfilling. So you got to build the skill of tolerance and feedback loops and how you work with people where they actually work for you. So, tangible work, I probably do like a couple hours per day. The rest is just working with people and kind of helping them see how to be productive. And the rest of the time is just me thinking about the world and just living life in a way that helps me get to my goals faster.
Yeah. There's a few things I'm noticing here where it depends on the value that you provide, like, and what you do to provide the value. And those two things alone, if they're aligned with you, if that's your life's work, then everything else kind of falls around that. And as you said, everything in your life kind of fuels that. And so it's all considered work. For the longest time, I have a few videos on YouTube that are called the 4-hour workday. There's a lot of philosophy behind that. It can go over 4 hours or under. It's just like a constraint to determine, okay, what's the most effective amount of work I can do in this time and what's moving the lever. But everything outside of that, like me going on a walk and pretty much doing research for my content by listening to things and writing things down, I started to like unpack everything. And even my walks, even like at the gym and other things, it was all done to fuel what I considered my best work. So that's kind of what I'm noticing. And so the value that you provide is a given. It has to be there, because there's stark differences between how much time people work, right? The creative people, it may not seem like they're working that much, but they kind of have to structure their day that specific way in order to deliver the value that they can. And for people that are doing different things, that might involve sitting and doing the actual work longer, but they wouldn't rather be doing anything else, right? Because they're not doing the creative work or want to do the creative work, so their life is structured differently. That's what I got out of it, at least. Do you have something?
One of the most impactful ideas that I've read in your 2-hour writer course, which I think is absolutely incredible. So if you guys want to learn about writing, 2-hour writer, the core principle that you've said is you have to set up your life in a way that enables what is it you actually want to accomplish. And when it comes to being a writer and living a lifestyle where you like have space to be creative, like you can't hustle for 14 hours and be creative at this. Like maybe some people can, but conventionally this is like not how it works. And it's like you exercising, getting the blood flowing, and it's like being maybe present in like the place with the sunshine and being mentally uncluttered, and like, you know, whether it's meditation or social activities, like whatever gets you in that state. Like it's all part of the process, and everyone needs to find for themselves what that lifestyle is that actually enables them to be that version. I thought it was incredibly impactful.
Nice, thank you. To go same direction with work-life balance, one thing I've struggled with a lot, because I'm a new co-founder, Matt's a new co-founder, Joey's a new co-founder. We're all new to this thing, and there's a lot of value in figuring it out as you go. But how do you think about employees' work days and structuring those? Because that's another thing that really fascinates me, and reading on that is like, how do you go about it? Is it just the typical 9 to 5? Is it something different? Is it a certain amount of hours per week? Is it what people like, however much people want, if they deliver a certain amount of value? How do you think about all of that?
We definitely don't track hours or anything like that. I think we're just entirely focused on outcomes. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, to get the kinds of outcomes we all hold ourselves at a bar to, like you got to put in the work. But the reality is, if we find someone who's like 100x and can just like chill for the whole week and then just like ship at the outcome level that we're looking for, which is always best in class, because everything we do, we strive to be the very best version of ourselves. Like if you can do that and chill somewhere and then like come work for 20 minutes, like awesome, cool, come hang out, come join. But at the end of the day, the kinds of people that we look to hire and that we attract and that are our tribe aren't people who ever want to be in a 9 to 5. Like if you're counting down the time until you clock out at Stan, then like Stan's not a good fit for you. You also probably aren't performing at Stan from a functional and also a cultural level. So like we would be having a conversation like, hey, like what role actually sparks you up? Like at whatever company or whatever organization, like we'll help you get there. But like for us, it's not about the hours. We know that there's a clear input for the success level we have. We're not measuring that. It's purely about outcomes. And that comes from one of our core values, which is like, we're only hiring people who have ownership, is what we call it. It's like this deep level of responsibility in them of like, hey, I'm going to do the best job possible for myself and also this organization. So that's at least how I think about it.
Definitely not counting the hours. The unlimited vacation policy kind of also comes from that perspective.
With a minimum, by the way. So we offer unlimited, for your context, unlimited vacation policy, which can be taken like poorly. And so we also do a minimum. So we ask that you take a minimum of at least 15 days,
cool. Yeah.
And then at least 3 per quarter. So we're like, no, like actually go take that. Like take the month off if you've been, like you have to build the trust, of course, and the ownership. But then it's like, no, go be a human being and figure out the harmony of it. Sorry.
John and I set a good example there by taking a couple months off a year at least. So it's like, hey, leadership by example. We do what we preach. This is actually so important. Culture and knowing who your people are. One of the things that I'm noticing consistently is that people who are best in class never count the hours. They work through completion. They just, very similar to us, define themselves by the quality of the output of their work. There's numerous scenarios where it's like did multiple all-nighters in office just because the team is working on something and it's like 11 o'clock and we're like looking at each other and it's like, we are close, we are not done. Like, are we doing it? We are doing it. And it's like, we would just go through completion. Builds a lot of camaraderie this way. It's like maybe a little bit toxic for some people. Not if you're having fun. Like we're having a ton of fun. Drinks, pizza, like whatever keeps us entertained. And it's like just, playfully living life in a way where we get to like do what we love doing, like get paid tremendous amount, and just have fun while at it. But another component that's interesting about culture, and once you bring those people, is culture is not what you say, like you stand for, and definitely not the values that are written, but it's the actions and behaviors of people like on the team. If you've ever been kind of part of a running club, for example, you would probably notice that, people run at different paces. And it's like some folks run significantly faster and others kind of take their time. And a good analogy there is like our team runs at a very particular pace. Like one cultural component is our iteration cycle is 24 hours. And it's like, don't come talk to anyone if you haven't made any progress in the 24 hours. And the things that you've said you're going to get done 24 hours ahead of time, you better come prepared to kind of report from the accountability point of view, like to the team on that. And when we make hires that, for example, aren't successful and hiring is very difficult, we make a good amount of mistakes. What you effectively see is that everyone is running at the same pace, but there's like one person like that keeps falling out. And you can have a conversation and share feedback. And it's like, hey, those are the things you can improve. But at the end of the day, they will either keep pace or they won't. And if they do keep pace, at least in that arena, they are your person. If they don't keep pace, then you have to correct a mistake.
Yeah. I want to talk about structural changes, like as you were growing, because you mentioned before all of this, like working out of a WeWork and then eventually moving into a place. How did things change as you grew? Is there a specific like number of employee milestones, or what are the big phases?
Yeah, I can start first from when it was just me being a creator and then talk about how that's evolved from a creator business into what we're hoping to build, which is an organization of lasting impact and legacy. So when people always use this term scale, and everyone's like, I'm always at least like, what the fuck does that mean? It's such an abstract term, like, oh, you just need to scale. And it's actually so unhelpful, I think. And so I'll walk you through what people mean by scale, and I'll try to make it as physical and visceral as possible. Things are really easy when it's just you. You don't have to catch up anyone on your context. And there's all these things that you take for granted inside you that you don't even recognize you're good at, that you just like do. Like if I just want to make content, I'm just gonna go pick up the phone, film this, script it in my head, what have you, and then like go post that. And then I'm gonna go like call a customer or DM a customer myself, and then go talk to them and like figure out how we can help them with their business, and then like have them on board and then have them be successful. And then I also know the picture of what kind of product I specifically want to build for my own creator account that can be helpful for everyone else. So I just mentioned actually in that like 25 different jobs that I do when I started. And then if you think about the reality of that now, it's like, I wish I could do all those things. But at the scale that we're at, it's like 60,000 people that we're supposed to help and be responsible for. Like I literally couldn't do all of those things. And so you have to hire people to do those things. And then you have to make sure they're all on the same page. And so you think about all the different kinds of personality types, right? Making sure that they all have the same kind of core value set so they all get along. Then they all have like our definition of success. Like my definition of success could be very different from Vitali's or someone else's. So to talk through like the as specific of a clarity as possible to get 25 people synced. Like the best way that I can describe this is like, when you go on a solo travel, it's so chill. And then like at 4 or 5 people, when you have a bunch of friends or family, it just becomes chaos. It's like, why is it so hard to get over and do like an 11 o'clock lunch, right? It's like, you don't even realize the nuance of like a person into a family and just the chaos of coordination that creates. And so an organization follows that path where like, first it's just like John in his dorm room, just like posting content, working through the product. Then it's finding an awesome co-founder who we have a ton of mind sync, but you got to catch up like every single day to make sure you're on pace. But the issue with that is like the network, the complexity of the network grows exponentially as you add more nodes onto the network. So you get to 10 people, it's still pretty chill. You still feel like a team. We're all still on the same page. We can all still talk every week. Everyone can share their input. They're all like rock star people. And then as you get to 50, people say that 50 is the number where it breaks, and we're getting close to that. But the real structural change we've had to make, and this is on me for limiting the business longer, and Vitali's really helped us grow through this, is I think the curse of an individual contributor is maybe they don't end up being a good manager and a leader. The typical example you hear all the time is like, not your best salesperson won't always be your best VP sales. And there's some people who are just like wired to be like the best like single player engineer, single player salesperson. And I think in some ways I was wired that way. And basically we had built, for so long, I got us from 0 to, close to 30 million ARR just off of like my insights alone with like an awesome scrappy team. Our colleagues are amazing, but it was mostly like John making every single decision and giving every direction. And that was the way that it could work at that time. But things really started to break down for us the last few months, and we finally gotten out of it, and the organization is really succeeding now in a different way. But it was like a painful period of evolution for us where we got to success, and then we just hit this flat line because we had hit the limits of the structure of the organization, which is, if you imagine it, it was like John at the top and then like a bunch of people doing what John said. But John can only make so many decisions in a day, and at some point we hit that threshold. And so now structurally, you think of the organization of the nodes, what we've restructured into and just seen incredible benefit to it is like we've gone from a single node here of John, which is I think a creator-based business, like a personality-driven business, to like a real organization of incredible people who are owning their own nodes. And then my job and Vitali's job is to make sure we're all rowing to the literal exact same point. But every single one of those nodes is better than us at whatever it is, and they're building their teams. And so you're just literally 10xing the throughput of the capacity of the organization. So I'd say that's the major structural learning that we've had over the last few months, and it was a really big personal learning for me as well.
Got it.
The thing that is most important to pay attention to when you're scaling, and the thing that breaks is alignment. As we're thinking about the networks and exponential complexity, it becomes increasingly more difficult to keep everyone on the same page. We did a survey, and someone like literally went and asked a number of people on the team, we were 30 people at the time, what are we doing and why are we doing it? You would not believe how many different versions of reality we've heard in those conversations. I spent so much time in the business leadership's meeting talking about product and like what we are doing and it's like how and the why. And then when I got the feedback from the engineer, and it's like, hey, why are you like they were literally building it. And it's like, why are you building this? And it's like, I'm not quite sure. Vitalii told me we need to get it done. So I was like, we kind of get it done as a company, but it's like, it's embarrassing how little alignment there was in people's mind. And it's like, this is when it was like a discovery point for me. It's like, we need to really step up our communication game. And it's like how information flows through the company from the top nodes down the tree. You got to be intentional about it. Like it's about all hands. It's about what your managers are talking about. It's about what business review meetings are going into. Like it's a very intentional topic, and us not being eager to like grow the headcount is just realizing that you can no longer focus on the job to be done, like on the customer, on the product. You need to put increasingly more time into like the systems of operating this machine that has actually nothing to do with your business. So that was, as a first-time founder, like that was a discovery. I was like, okay, well, there's a whole new world that we now need to understand. So that's alignment, the number one thing.
What's like a most impactful tip for maintaining that alignment, or like the biggest thing that you've found for keeping people on the same page? Because ours isn't bad. Like we can easily talk between 10 people, but once it expands, what should I start implementing something now? Should I wait until it's a problem, like the hiring process? Or
if you said something less than 10 times, you haven't said it enough. when it comes to like one of the things we started doing is like we are going to start literally every single big company meeting with like, this is what we are doing this year. You've heard it multiple times. We're going to remind everyone, and it's like, this is where the North is. All the conversations that stem from this needs to be in some shape or form related to this topic. So kind of when you're communicating is like, nothing is too much, broken record, just repeat. One of the things that I think John and I have done particularly well in the early days is one of the things we do, we have a Sunday meeting, 3 p.m. Toronto, lunchtime LA, where we have 2 hours unstructured, just in the presence of each other, catching up. Because our worlds are connected to a significant degree, but also very disconnected. And we observe each other all the time. And it's like things that happen without context, like oftentimes we would not agree. And things are complex to a degree where no decisions are necessarily wrong decisions, but they require a lot of understanding. And it's like, what is going on to get there? Back in the day, it was every single day. Now it's much less frequently, once a week. But just having conversations with your most important people. So for you, with your co-founders down the line, with the company in some ways, just it's like, hey, let's get on the same page and let's just talk about what is going on. Because what you don't talk about, people will assume, and those assumptions oftentimes would be incorrect.
The best way to put that Sunday conversation, it's just every single week, him and I just get on the phone and we just have sometimes an agenda, and sometimes we're just arguing to all hell, and sometimes we just like are just catching up broadly on it. But like the point there is, it's important to have meta time on top of doing time, because Monday through Friday, we're just drinking from the fires, executing day in, day out. There's no time to like go above and go higher level and just like, we're using this buzzword of alignment. I'm like trying to be more concrete for folks, just to like connect and make sure we're on the same page and on the same like mental wavelength. And so you asked for some tactical thoughts on how you can make sure to create as much alignment as possible early on. Okay, it's just like everyone thinking about the same thing and knowing exactly where we're all going. It's like, it's the difference. Like they talk a lot about like, if everyone's 1 degree off, like you wanted to go to Boston, but you ended up in New York, like whatever that travel is across the Atlantic. It's the same thing. Like it magnifies its scale and complexity. And so one of the things we do is this sounds really simple. We have a weekly all hands every single week. And so on that call, the leaders are all talking about what is most important for the company. And this is a very tactical thing, but it's really helpful. We just came up with this gimmick one day, like for fun. One day I like put at the end of one of our presentations, hey guys, pop quiz. Because I'd just gone over the entire year's worth of goals, and then pop quiz at the end was like, what's our year-end goal? And I counted to 3, and then we all tried to say it, and it all came out wrong, and we all missed the words. And then the next week, I just completely forgot to take those slides out, and it became a thing for us that I've realized is super, super helpful, that we all kind of look forward to, where now I can say pop quiz, what's our goal for 2025? 3, 2, 1. Everyone in Acquire Voices will say, acquire and serve 200,000 entrepreneurs. And that pithy short goal is our high-level organizational goal, but it's stuff like that seems so silly, because you would never need to tell yourself that. You just know your goal. Mm-hmm. But with 50 different people on different pages, like you've got to find these specific ways to maximize shared time together, which is like why one of my hot takes, and people can disagree with me on, is like, if you're going to build an organization of success, I think you need to be in person for a lot of it. But why that shared time together, that ambient time, just spending time together is so important. And then being really intentional, you as the leader of the organization, to make sure that everyone knows exactly where they're going. And you can do that through like content, whether that's like live calls and as a group or through other forms of content. You have to share and communicate.
Yeah.
I want to take us on a tangent a little bit, but to kind of build more, and fundamentally agree with John on building in person. Very unpopular opinion these days, but would live and die on the hill of living in person. Working remotely has its advantages. You can be extremely productive. We spent a tremendous amount of money first on WeWork, now for paying for all the offices. And the reason you do this and the reason it works is because what you effectively are creating, you're creating a systems and the environment where good ideas can thrive. Building a company is not you about efficiently moving like in a particular direction at the fastest way possible. Like the hardest thing about building a company is actually figuring out what is the right thing to do. And those ideas come about in random catch-ups. They come by the water cooler conversations. They come, one of the traditions we have, Toronto and LA, like we have lunch together. Like all the 20 people try to find themselves spaces, like we would move tables, and we would just eat and talk, like sometimes work related, sometimes not work related. And then like after this, like some ideas would spark and we would go like, try this out, or it's like have another conversation. We would build clarity. It would never happen if for you to talk about something, you need to schedule a Zoom call. And Slack makes things like easier, and other communication platforms where it's like you can build a culture around this, but there's absolutely nothing that comes even close to just being shoulder to shoulder with the people that you think extremely highly of, where you can just like, hey, what do you think about this? And then you see where it takes you.
Yeah, I love that. That's one thing that Matt's really good at in Toronto is, one, everyone's there. It's me and Joey, and then Stephanie, girlfriend, support down here. And so it's really cool to see that they, one, or four of them are roommates, and then they all like go over to the same house. They're like kitchen counter and like an extended counter. They just have like the desk set up there, and they're all working around the same place. So it's really cool to see, and it's fun to go up there. But I want to wrap things up with kind of like a selfish question of ours is, what were, let's say three, for the sake of throwing out a number, what were the three levers that you had to move? And if we can tie those to like the points in your business where you saw those like jumps in growth, like what took you, like I'm assuming first one is product market fit. Like when you see that, what kind of brought you there? Is it social media? Is it traffic? Is it product hitting a certain feature set or milestone, or all of the above?
I think I would start post the point of product market fit. So Stan fundamentally has product market fit where we are successful not because of how many customers we have, but because of how much money those customers are making. Because by seeing really individual success stories where it's like you see it like end to end from the place where I didn't create content, like all the way to I made $1 million, what we are doing like fundamentally works. So it starts there. And on that foundation, then there is style that allows us to amplify the impact of it as much as possible. One of those levers, I believe, is service, and the fact that Stan is not a software company, like we are a people company, and we use software to deliver on the promise that we are making to folks. And that promise is if you work with us, you'll make the maximum amount of money possible. And the component that we are actually offering there is like what we do with them. The second piece, I think, is speed. I think Stan fundamentally moves much faster than most of the companies out there when it comes to the specific like one equation, time from the idea to value. I got two so far.
It's so interesting observing the angles you look at the business versus mine, and it speaks towards like the partnership of it. Like we think often, like I have so much appreciation now for the yin yang model. It's like same core values but different perspectives. Because I was thinking about the things that I do, and I would say the three that I can come up with. Number one is post product market fit. I agree as well. Is like I think product market fit very rarely comes like as one big I have product market fit. That's probably if you're lucky or deeply intuitive. Product market fit comes from a lot of painful iteration cycles. Like it's super unglamorous, and it's just literally about like you ship a product, you go out and talk to people that actually really like it, and you ask them why, and people who didn't really like it but kind of liked it, what would make them really like it, and you just keep improving that way. And it's like kind of unsexy, and maybe for some products it just shoots off, but for us that wasn't like it wasn't like a step function thing. We'd always kind of had some version of it, and it just has compounded to get to some point where it's really, really good. It's just fundamentally the best thing out there now. And there's so many ways we need to improve it still. So the three levers I would think about is, there's that quote that I think most people are now recognizing, if you build it, they will come, is not necessarily true for most people. It takes a lot of marketing and distribution and like getting rejected. Even if it's like the most amazing idea in the world, no one cares. I don't care. You have to make people care. And so the first lever for us was distribution. Like one of the first reasons we got off the ground was the novel insight that just came from like me vlogging in public, because Stan was such a bad idea in a business. I was in business school. It was like the opposite of a good idea, which was like there were 500 competitors, multiple legacy incumbents who had raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And I remember using them. I'm like, these are so shitty and clunky and so overpriced for like shit software. And so I built Stan, but initially it wasn't like a 10x better product. It was like 2 or 3x better, but it was like wasn't enough. But so you think about like, then how has every other one of those companies like flatlined or gone under? Hundreds of them raised tons of funding, and Stan has been a rocket ship. And it starts first with the key insight is distribution. All those people were just tech bros trying to make money on a hot economy in a hot market. No, I fucking bled this shit. I fucking posted content all day long and deeply like these aren't just my customers, they're my friends. They're just like I like we are friends outside of work, and I'm so like grateful for them. But that's the first thing. It was like I started posting content, and that was our insight that no one else was doing. Of like, oh, the best way to talk to your customers is through the content that they consume and the place that they're already at. And so that was the first unlock for us, was like the floodgates first open because we realized that distribution should come inbound through content. And we started first with my content, and then your question as an entrepreneur or leader should be like, okay, how do I 10x and scale this? And so the obvious answer is then you hire more creators to make more content for you, and you blow out your content. And so that's the first lever. It was distribution. The next two are the last year, and I think it's really going to push us to the next phase. The next one is going to sound as silly as truly understanding who you are. And I'm still trying to understand and process what this actually means, but I know it's so powerful. It starts with buzzwords like values. What I mean by that is like through one of the reasons I'm so grateful to the entrepreneurial journey and why I think it's so powerful and why we should give it to more people is it really forces you to look at yourself in the mirror. You get punched so fucking hard, but if you persist for long enough, you learn a lot about what your values and what value you can give in this world. AKA, you actually start to learn what your differentiation is. You understand like what do you care about, who are the kinds of people you fuck with, and also like how can you make a living for yourself. And so basically through the process of just like trying to build this company, making so many mistakes on hiring, learning how to hire better, getting to work with the awesome people we get to work with, like you get to understand like, oh, these are our people. AKA these, like for us, our values are pretty simple. Like you have extremely high integrity, unquestioned integrity, good kind person, also exceptional. A lot of nuances from there, but like you get a sense of like, oh, so this is who I am, and this is then allows you to answer the next question, which will be the next level we'll talk about, is like, how do you horizontally scale that? But for us, like the who we are question isn't just from a hiring perspective and building an organization, it's also from a brand differentiation perspective. Like we have such clarity on why people come to us and what they resonate with, and that takes years of pattern matching, years of just showing up every day and doing boring stuff, and then like 3 years later you wake up and it's like, oh, like the reason why none of our competitors are going to come close to us is because they don't understand content and brand and will never care about our customer as much as we do. And you start to like cement these principles for yourself, and everyone's are different. And you start to realize like, oh, this is because you've worked with somebody, because like you understand like through almost intuition, like, oh, this is the lever to pull. And so for us, you just like understand after like 4 years of commitment who you are and how you differentiate. And that's a persistence game and an observation game, because then that allows you the last thing. And I alluded to this, but this is the lever that we're really starting to push now. And I'm hopeful, but really excited that it'll work out, which is how to build an organization rather than like doing a thing, which I think before I was doing a thing for us, but like this is about going from a creator-based business where like a single person here is doing something, John, versus like how cool would it be if we could 10x the number of creators who are even more successful than me. So it's about how do you build this organization, this like abstract entity, this engine that goes about replicating and finding more people that are way better than me at 100x the volume and training them how to be successful and letting them just go do their own thing and be proud of it. And that, like literally from a volume perspective, is just going to outweigh literally anything I could do myself. And so that's the next level of problem that I'm starting to think about. And I think it's a really key lever for us in the future.
One way I think to reward one of John's earlier point is Stan's brand is for creators by creators. And it started with John being a creator himself. And then it's like, he gets it. We as a company get it. Many folks on the team started creating contents. We are now hiring creators. And the truth is most companies out there just don't have any business being like in the business they're in. And this kind of founder market fit is incredibly important to just set yourself like up for success, because like when you're building for yourself, you just understand the insights so much more deeply, so that you just feel what's the right thing to do, as opposed to just doing a formal version of like 3 months research to find out what customers are objectively trying to tell you. The other thing that I've just realized as I'm looking back and reflecting on our journey is we've actually been very consistent and very selective at the one thing that we've done well for distribution. That's about partnering with creators and what kind of creators. And that was the only thing that we've done for like literally 4 years. Never spent $1 on marketing. Stan is not on Twitter yet, not on Facebook either. And it's like we are staying in lane of what we know works. And it's like once in a while we'll talk to growth folks and it's like, you guys should be on Twitter. Or it's like, you guys should be like elsewhere. Or you should do this, that, and the other thing. And every time we have this conversation, it's like, yeah, but we are not. Because we know what we are doing and we are good at it. And then as time goes on, these things are going to evolve and grow. But finding that one thing that works for you and sticking with it and actually like giving it time to succeed, because like most of the things that are worthwhile and that scale like don't happen overnight. Like you need to let them time to grow. Like that consistency and belief that is founded in data and insights, I think was transformational. One of the big reasons we are here today.
Awesome. To end, last question, super quick. What are the main channels? Just Instagram, TikTok?
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
Okay.
You will not find a better converting store on social media and mobile first, which is like where all of us are going.
That makes sense.
So our customers literally, like we've run the case studies experiments, our customers literally make more money switching to Stan. So
a testament to that, yeah.
More and more LinkedIn and newsletters.
Oh, I completely forgot. Yeah, we just started on LinkedIn and people are crushing it there too. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'll say like for a lot of the people that do have a product or service, like just try Stan. Like 14-day free trial. Super simple. And it's so much. I was on Redacted before and it's $30 a month or $99 a month compared to something that's ever increasing up to like $2,000 a month. Like just, yeah, start with Stan. But I think we killed it. That was a lot. Anything you want to leave off with? Anything you think I left out? Any wise words? Something on your mind lately? A quote?
I think people often ask me like how to just be successful. And I've now met a couple dozen billionaires or very successful famous people. And some of them you meet and you're like, wait, what? And I mean that with all due respect. Many of them are extremely like hardworking and very intelligent in all these ways. But what I can tell you about all of these people, and I have immense respect for all of them for this trait, the only thing that matters is that you just persist. And so for everyone that are like the fact that you watched this whole video, like, I'm sorry, that sucks. But like you're clearly deeply invested in your own success. Just show up every single day and never ever give up. And I promise you'll look back in 5 years and I'll get to say, I told you so. Like you're going to be successful. So.
Yeah. I have a quote too. One after another. Firmly believe in this. Live by this every day. Nothing is impossible and your level of confidence defines your level of achievement.
Beautiful. We'll end there.
Awesome.
That's it.
Cool. Thanks for asking those questions. I don't usually have fun in a lot of podcast interviews, but I actually had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I had a good flow.